Hey guys, this is Dr. Shumard with Integrative Wellness Center of San Diego, and I want to talk to you about a very specific topic today regarding a thyroid condition called Hashimoto's. Now, many people don't realize that I'm also an author of the thyroid epidemic that you can see here. That's a book that I've wrote. But thyroid conditions are seriously haunting many most commonly females that they're experiencing thyroid conditions, but there are males as well. The numbers are pretty staggering. Most females are going to experience some sort of thyroid condition. But what many don't realize is that the most common cause of a thyroid condition is an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, are some people out there that have already been diagnosed, they're really clear on this type of condition, but many patients that I speak to on a weekly basis have never heard of this, have no clue what's going on. This is why we do constant webinars that are talking to patients like yourself who may not know they have this condition. Very easy test that can be ran to know if you have this or not. But those of you who do know you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, today I want to talk about why it may not be a good idea to do an autoimmune type diet, meaning there's lots of diets out there that are like the autoimmune diets and the best things you can do for if you have an autoimmune disease, and why that might not be the best thing for you to do. So let's jump right into that, because I literally have conversations every single day with patients who are suffering with this condition, and they think they're doing the right things because they've read a book on how to eat the right types of foods with an autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's, or how to eat for a Hashimoto's patients. Now, just like my book, the book I wrote is very general speaking, meaning it's very educational on the things that we do in our office and what individuals may be suffering with this type of condition, but it doesn't address the underlying mechanisms for you. And that also means food, right? So we know that for most cases, with food, the autoimmune diets are typically going to be something like, nightshades, right? They tell you should stay away from nightshades, right? Because these nightshades can create certain problems within your body that can be harmful if you have an autoimmune disease. It could be something like lectins. Lectins is another one that can be a common thing. Sometimes, in some cases, certain types of veggies that may not be the best thing for you to eat as well. Or certain types of things like dairy or eggs, etc. Right? And there's another one, and another one. So there's certain things that I want you to be aware of. When you're dealing with an autoimmune disease, when we're talking about the diet has to be specific to your needs. So in many cases, we talk about the triggers that are triggering the immune system to actually attack the body. In this specific situation will be your thyroid, causing the underlying condition of hypothyroidism. And what you're being treated is basically for the hypothyroidism, and nobody is addressing the underlying autoimmune components. So when we talk about the triggers, food can be a trigger. A common thing that I see in my practice with individuals suffering from autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's thyroiditis is something called leaky gut disease, right? Leaky gut is a very common problem, not only in autoimmune, but other health conditions as well. Essentially, just to give you a really quick definition of what leaky gut is basically your gut lining becomes very thin. So I'll give you an analogy. Most of us are pretty familiar with what cheesecloth is. Cheesecloth, the goal of cheesecloth is to remove all larger particles and let the smaller ones get through if you're trying to strain certain things. Well, your gut lining is very similar. The problem is when the gut becomes very thin, imagine if you cut a hole in the cheesecloth, microscopic hole, if you will. Now larger particles can start to come through that are called macromolecules. Now these macromolecules are usually going to be food, and when that food comes in, beyond the gut lining is going to be your bloodstream. Well, inside your bloodstream, you have little guys called the immune system. The immune system then sees this macromolecule and starts to attack it because it doesn't believe it should be there. And next thing you know, you start to develop what's called a food sensitivity. So a food sensitivity is very important because that is different than an allergy. An allergy is what's called an immunoglobulin E response, like allergy, and not an immunoglobulin G or immunoglobulin A or an immunoglobulin M response. Those are more sensitivities. So sensitivities are going to be developed over the years, and allergy is commonly something you may be born with as a congenital problem. So a sensitivity occurs because the immune system starts to attack the food. Now let's just say that food is a piece of broccoli, right? And because that molecule. Now your immune system doesn't know the difference between a piece of broccoli and another type of food. It doesn't see that, right? So what it sees is a protein structure. And whatever that protein structure is, the immune system is going to create an antibody to remind itself that this food or this issue is a problem. So if it ever comes back into the body again, it's going to attack it and destroy it and cause a lot of problems in the system. Now, what's very interesting about this is that these protein molecules will look very similar to other foods. So a piece of broccoli can be similar to something else, and so the immune system will see that and start to attack it as well. So next thing you know, this individual has multiple different types of food sensitivities. So that has to be analyzed. There's multiple tests you can do that are on the market. There's one that we use here that tests over 180 different foods to analyze to see what specifically the individual needs to be eating for their specific needs. If we're just doing general things like this, yes, they may be helpful, but how do we know if you have a sensitivity to nightshades? If you don't have a sensitivity to, say, eggplant, well, then you can eat eggplant. This is very general, right? So we may see this commonly in many individuals dealing with autoimmune disease, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's for you. So in my office, I want to be very specific to the individual and not use general type things that we know that's out there through the research. So if an individual can have lectins or specific vegetables, then we're going to give that to them, even though some of the research says, oh, this may not be good for the thyroid or may not be good because for the immune system, but it's okay for that individual. We really want to be specific for the individual and not based on what problems are being stated through a global or general speaking autoimmune patient. So this is very important because once we understand the food sensitivities, then we can start to reduce that inflammation because food sensitivities can be a trigger to the immune system. As the immune system starts to attack the food, whatever that food is that you're eating, that's going to start to create an immune reaction, which is then going to cause the immune system to attack other areas of your body, like your thyroid in this specific case if you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This downward stream, this domino effect will continue to happen over and over and over. And what's really interesting about food sensitivities is that they're not going to create the normal symptoms that you're going to be expecting. Most people think that if they have a sensitivity, it's going to cause gut issues, it's going to cause bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea. But I'll tell you this, that's usually the last symptom that someone's going to experience. A food sensitivity can be very difficult to diagnose on your own unless you run specific testing for two reasons. Number one, you can have a delayed reaction, right? So you can eat something today, let's say you ate some eggs today, and 3 days from now, you can have a reaction, which is called a delayed immune reaction from eggs. Well, how are you ever going to be able to tell it was eggs? For most people, they'll think, oh, what did I eat yesterday? What did I eat last night? That could be contributing to the symptoms I'm experiencing today. So that's number one, is very difficult because you can have an immediate reaction, which is a specific immunoglobulin reaction, or you can have a delayed reaction, which is a different type of immunoglobulin reaction. Now, the second thing is that oftentimes the symptoms may not be associated with the gut at all. They could be happening in other areas. You could have joint pain, headaches. Your body could have more fatigue. You may have sleep issues. You could have a rash develop. There's so many other things that could happen and relate to a sensitivity to food. It could be a second, tertiary, or even a fourth down the line of a symptom that's going to occur. Very difficult for you to know that happened from that food, or if it's associated with food altogether. So when you're being analyzed with someone with Hashimoto's, you have to be analyzed very specific for your needs. And with food, that is very important. Now, you could take the whole general approach and try to eat the type of foods that have been shown best for an autoimmune patient, but it may not get you the results you're looking for. You may still not feel better and thinking, well, I tried it, it didn't work because you're doing more general type stuff. That must mean that you have much more, potentially underlying problems that haven't been diagnosed, like the food sensitivities we're dealing with here. To try to reduce that inflammatory reaction, put the right types of foods into your body. We know that foods can be part of the healing process. Now, in many cases, the foods themselves will not heal the body, but what the foods will do is they'll put your body into a state that healing can take place. Just like if you had a fire and threw gasoline, right? The gasoline did not cause the fire, but the gasoline will make the fire worse. Food can do the same thing with your body. The more you put into your body that's healthy, that's vibrant, that's going to help your body heal or go through the healing process, the better off you're going to be. And the other thing is, food is very easy to control. It's much easier to control what's coming into your body from what you're putting into your mouth rather than the environment you're in or the stress you're dealing with, maybe with a workload or with your family or whatever that might be. Those are much more harder things to deal with because you don't have control over those things. What you do have control over is what you put into your mouth. And knowing what to put into your mouth to help your body heal is a huge component to you getting better and dealing with this underlying autoimmune condition, to helping you potentially stop the process of the autoimmune attacks and, as we know, the future attacks in the body, because we know with one autoimmune disease, you can develop multiple others. So I'm not going to go too deep into that today, but my main focus today was to really talk to you more about why the autoimmune diets that are out there that you may be reading on Google or other books that are out there, phenomenal information, but it may not be the best approach for your needs. And it really depends on what you're trying to do. Are you really trying just to manage your condition and trying to reduce your symptoms? Or are you trying to fix the problems that is contributing to the symptoms and reversing the chances of future complications that may occur with your condition?